Here I want to show you how to copy and move formulas and functions within the worksheet in Excel. So I'm going to show you how to do this with a very basic sum function. Now let's go ahead and sum or add up all of the numbers underneath set 1. So equals sum, just a very basic, very simple function. And now we have 20. The function, notice it says equal sum A2 to A6. So cell A2 to A6. That's the range of cells that it's adding together. Now let's say I wanted to move this function or this formula, the contents of this cell, from right here underneath sum 1 to right over here. Basically, I just want to move it within the spreadsheet, but I don't want anything to change. Well, the easiest way to do that is to select the cell that contains the formula or function and go to the outside, the outline of it, until you see these 4 arrows. Click and drag it to the cell where you want it to be. Notice when I double click, it is exactly the same as it was in the previous cell, equal sum A2 to A6. Now let's undo that. But what if you just want to copy it to another cell? So what if you want it here and here? Well, if you just select that cell, hit Control C to copy, go to the cell where you want it to be, and hit Control V to paste it there, notice we get 0. Well, why does that happen? That doesn't seem to make any sense. Now let's double click the cell and see what's in it. Notice it says sum E2 to E6. So the original cell says A2 to A6. Well, what happened? Well, when you copy and paste it, the relative or absolute cell references become very important. So if you move the outside of the cell by selecting it, click the border, drag it around anywhere, the actual contents of that cell will not change, even if it's a formula or a function with relative or absolute cell references. But when you copy and paste it to another cell, Excel is going to change the cell references based on whether they are absolute or relative. So by default, when you enter a cell reference or a range reference like A2 to A6, it's going to be relative. That means if you copy and paste it anywhere in the spreadsheet, it's going to change. So we moved it 1, 2, 3, 4 columns to the right. We have relative cell references. It moved from column A at A2 to A6 over 1, 2, 3, 4 to column E, E2 to E6. So if you're copying and pasting and moving formulas and functions around in your worksheet, note that you have to be very careful to notice whether the references are absolute or relative. Now, if you didn't want the ranges to change at all, no matter how you moved them, you can make them absolute. So double click the cell, and what you can do is put $signs in front of each row and column reference. So $A, $2, $A, $6. Now when you copy it and paste it, everything stays exactly the same. Now a very quick way to do that is to highlight the cell or range references and hit F4. That will cycle through having absolute or relative cell references on just the rows, the columns, nothing, or everything. Now the benefit of having relative cell references, so let's go ahead and take the $signs off, hitting F4 to cycle through, is that if we copy it, let's say one cell to the right, well, it automatically updates to sum the numbers for set 2. And another way to copy the formulas or functions is to use the quick fill handle right here. So select the cell, click and drag in the bottom right hand corner, and it will do a copy paste. Now note that even though I only did going left to right here, if you move the cells up and down, they will change accordingly. So just like the references change when you move it left to right between the columns, they also change going up and down between the rows. So if we copy it over here, now we have D8 to D12. Now another way that you can move this, instead of just using the border, is to cut and paste it. So if we hit Control X to cut it, let me delete that first. So go here, Control X to cut, go to the desired cell and Control V to paste. The cell references will still remain the same. Now this is just a very basic example, and this should help you to start getting used to the idea that when you move formulas and functions within the worksheet, the cell references or range references may change. So just because you enter a formula or a function in one cell doesn't mean that if you copy to another cell, it's going to remain the same. So just remember, by default, when you enter range or cell references for functions and formulas, it's going to be relative. That means if you copy and paste the cell, they will update. But if you cut and paste the cell, they will not update. If you don't want them to update when you copy and paste them, just put $signs in front of the cell or range references, or highlight it and hit the F4 key to cycle through absolute cell references for everything, just the rows, just the columns, or nothing. And that's pretty much all there is to the basics of how to copy and move formulas and functions to new cells within a worksheet in Excel.